Michel, I did warn you that I would be very angry at you and everyone else at Dontnod when you were really mean to that poor little puppy, but you've invited us here to play through Life is Strange 2, so I guess we'll let it slide for now. How are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, I'm so excited. I'm genuinely very excited to sort of play through some of these scenes with you and have you kind of chat through what was going through your minds when, because it must have been quite daunting, I imagine, you know, to kick all this off.
Yeah, it's quite a huge project for us. I think it's, you've seen with the road movie structure, there is so many places those two kids are going, and yeah, it's quite a difficult task to create this game. I'm really thankful also for all our teams for what they are doing, and I'm really happy to be here with you to, I don't know, to go over some scenes and talk about, I don't know, some creative process or
I'm gonna kick
why
it off
we
right
did
now.
stuff. Or
I mean, the thing that I really like is that, and I've said this before, like you guys, you could have just done something very similar to the first series, and it feels like you've gone, no, you know what, we're gonna keep trying new things. The first series was so successful and so unexpected that it feels like that formula worked really well for you, where you decided to just do what felt right, right?
Yeah, it was a big challenge in the beginning because we, like you said, we could have maybe just use the same formula, going over with I don't know, a small town setting, some mystery and a set of characters going over, I don't know, some investigation or something, which we loved doing in the first game. But at a point we were thinking that, you know, as creators, you don't have that many games you can do in your career or something, and we have tons of different stories and ideas we would like to share to the players. So when we thought about this game with Raoul Barbet and Jean-Luc Cano, the other game director and our writer, we thought that, okay, maybe we should try to do something different, to tackle new themes, new set of characters, just to renew ourselves, but also to be able to talk about some different topics to the players. So that's why we decided to brainstorm a lot and came up with this crazy story of those two kids on the run, trying to flee from the United States, going to the lands of their father in Mexico. And yeah, as this first scene is really
setting the tone here. Yeah,
it was quite complicated to think about how to handle this kind of scene. So this is just a teaser of the scene that begins before the normal setting happens, but you know what happens later in the game, and thinking about those subjects is complicated because, you know, it's of course talking about some police mistakes, some police violence, and it's a subject that's complicated because we don't want to talk about it in a way that wouldn't be subtle, or that would be, I don't know, just going for some sort of drama, gratuitous drama or something like that.
You have to be responsible about it, right? Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, what kind of came first? Was it the setting, was it the theme, or was it the characters, you know, or did it all kind of like coalesce in a way?
That's always a bit of a mess when we start to think about what kind of story we want to tell.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted to have something different, and quite quickly we knew also that for us Life is Strange is about the characters. I mean, we knew how much the player loved Max and especially also Chloe, which was as the secondary character basically. So we thought that something we wanted to have right now is, in this game, is have the secondary character be even more important. That's why we have those two brothers, Sean and Daniel.
Yeah.
And Daniel is almost always with you.
Yes.
So basically your choices in the game are always influencing Daniel. He's always looking at what you're doing, what you're saying.
And really unexpected ways as well. I mean, we'll come to that as well, like a bit later on, but I think when Johnny and I have played through this, we've had so many comments come through from people who it's really unexpected the way that Daniel reacts to different scenarios, and even when people feel like they've done similar things to what we've done, in fact he's been learning in such subtle ways that they don't even know where he's picked up certain behaviours from. Now this is the one really sad thing about our playthrough actually, is that we've decided to kind of cut Lila out, and a lot of people are like, no.
Oh yeah, I mean, you didn't call
No.
her. Yeah.
We did that to protect
But
her.
yeah, maybe it worked. If you played, so in episode 2, basically based on whether you called her or not, there is a difference when you try to call her again. I don't know if when you played episode 2 you didn't call her either. So you basically maybe you helped her. You'll see.
You're sitting here with all the knowledge, and it's like, no. But she's really cool. I like how much of an impact she makes in such a small space of time. Like, I already know that, like, I'm missing out by not having her in our playthrough.
That's something we really wanted with this first scene. It's basically puts the player in a really familiar place. Basically, the game really starts like a scene that could happen in the first Life is Strange.
Yes.
You're this normal teenager, which is kind of a bit of shy, or at least we did create Sean a bit in the same way that we did create Max, where that's the kind of characters we like to use as our we like to use this kind of characters as our main characters, because we think that the players can
get into their sort of mindset,
put some of their own feelings in them if there is enough space.
Agreed.
I mean, he has a personality, of course, but it's not taking too much space. So there is still space for the players' choices.
It's interesting in this scene as well how much even the lighting reminds you of the first season of Life is Strange. It's got that sort of nostalgic kind of glow to it, especially when he's like, you know, it's a Friday night and he's like getting ready to go out and stuff, and you're like, teenagers. And they're like, they have no responsibilities other than gotta find some booze to bring to the party tonight and stuff. Take one or refuse. Well, we refused before, so let's do something different. We're being a bad kid.
It's bad for your health.
Very bad, yes.
So no, this is a choice that defines everything next.
No!
No, just kidding.
But yeah, because you have said before that some choices, they may not mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but it's just allowing players to make their own mark on the characters in a way.
Yeah, I think I understand that in this kind of games, when myself also as a player, when I play those games with choice and consequences, I'm always thinking, okay, will this have a big impact or something? But when we design the story and think about this kind of game, we also really like to have those small choices that are just there to basically make you enjoy the story as it is. Not every choice has to have life and death consequences later. Sometimes it's just there to, I don't know, put some flavor on the journey, on what's happening, and just decide a bit more of what kind of character you are, what kind of walkthrough, basically, what kind of adventure you're living.
The problem is the players don't know the difference. So I'm still overthinking it even when I like select those things.
Yeah, I think I've seen that the players really love Lila as a character.
She's amazing.
And it's interesting because it's a character we only see for, I don't know, 10 minutes or something in the game. But we knew when we created her that players would really like her. I think that's the way we designed this first sequence, is really to put the player in a comfort zone.
Yes.
It is Sean's comfort zone. It's his life. It's his home. It's his best friend, his dad, his family.
And it makes you yearn for that once that is gone and irreparably gone. You're like, you know, like you got a sense of their normal lives and why they'd want that back so much. Yeah,
and even I think for the player, because we put everything in place at this moment the player wants to go to that party, wants to just be a normal kid, and
you get that real sense of unfairness, I guess, that it's all ripped away from them so quickly.
Everything is taken away so abruptly.
That's a penis!
Oh yeah, he's a teenager, he's 16, he has the right to make lame jokes.
Of course. But yeah, it's like that is one of the things that I am sad of most with our playthrough is that we have kind of sidelined Lila, but for her own protection, I guess, because you just don't know how that's gonna affect her. But so because I think up until episode 2, players can have spoken to her twice more, 2 more phone calls.
Yeah, you can. Oh, that's interesting in this part is so the neighborhoods they are living in basically. When I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, when I was in a trip to the United States, I went to Seattle and visited a lot of the neighborhoods next to Seattle.
Yeah.
And in one of the neighborhoods quite next to the airport, I noticed that you have those planes every 3 minutes or so. So that's the kind of details we use. That knowing that houses
are
living
like right under the flight path.
Yeah, basically the houses are not that expensive, so it works also for the kind of family and middle class Sean's and Esteban's are living in, and we use this kind of details of the planes also to. I hope that people living in Seattle or near the Tacoma airport will recognize the details.
Yeah, and like because you guys did actually do proper road trips, right? To like prepare for this. That's so cool.
Actually, we did 2. It was one of the first. It was not especially for this game. It was basically our vacation after the end of the first Life is Strange. I went for 1 week with Jean-Luc, our writer. We just went to Pacific Northwest, so to Washington and Oregon.
Oh wow!
It was almost a memory trip
Reunion
to the first Life is Strange, and we still took a lot of pictures, and I stayed for 2 more weeks by myself and just walked and traveled the West Coast, took a lot of pictures, but without really knowing what this game would be. But we used it, of course, as some ideas when we started to brainstorm the story with them. And then 1 year later, when we were just starting the pre-production, we went again for 1 week with Raoul to visit some of the places basically you'll see in episode 3, 4, and 5. But I won't say where.
Now this scene must be very important because you're introducing Daniel, and like the players kind of have to like him, right? Like he has to.
So I don't know if he has to like him at first. Basically, he's your little brother, so there is this bond that's just family. So Sean likes him because it's his brother. Yeah. But at first, we really wanted this relationship to be shown like.
I think that's literally where I fell in love with him. That little eyebrow wiggle. That was it.
He's a bit of a little brat.
It's adorable.
Yeah. That's the kind of balance I think that was hard to get, but was important. Is to get this feeling of you love your brother, but you also sometimes just hate him because he gets on your nerve. I don't know what kind of choice you want to make.
This is too hard now because when you know what happens,
know everything.
You're like, oh, your poor father who slaved away. Oh gosh, no. But then
you can be just mean and take choice A, where basically
you're both guilty.
Yeah.
I can't. It's the little eyebrow wiggle. I can't not.
Did you do this choice?
I did,
You
I
did
could
this
not.
choice. Even
He's like, too cute. Plus, I just felt like it means more to him. Nobody else, like, the dad can go and buy his own chocolate bars. But the house is really nice. I really enjoyed this first bit of kind of just wandering around and getting a sense of who they are. And the house, like, it does feel really lived in, and like, you know, you really sort of get a sense of who they are as a family.
I think houses are some of the places we like the most in the Life is Strange games.
It must be quite fun.
It's a lot of work, but it's really fun also for the artist to create, you know, all the posters, the pictures you see on the wall. There is a lot of small details that we know not every player will look at, but basically that's the kind of, we are really happy with the concept art team we're working with, and they just love to put small details everywhere.
Well, especially since Sean is a budding artist himself, like that kind of the detail, that's even more important now because he has his sketchbook and all the little sort of sketches that you can pick up in his room too. I really like that, the sort of the drawing detail that's been added to this one. It's kind of his form of sitting down and sort of having a small moment to kind of take in the world.
I think it's something we did that with Max with photography.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had those
The little moments
collectibles where you
did
could just take pictures, and she was documenting, writing a lot in her diary and putting pictures. We knew that it was a feature we wanted to keep, to have this kind of diary, but we didn't want to do it exactly the same way. So we thought that, okay, Sean might be less a writing person than Max. So that's why we decided to have Sean's diary much more about pictures and much less text. So basically, yeah, this is the kind of picture we really like to have our artists to draw.
You know, like even just their stances and like everything, and his little beetroot face. He's like so embarrassed about it.
So yeah, you can really tell a lot about someone, about with his room, with belongings, with just looking at stuff there is. So that's always for us a huge part of the Life is Strange games, of the games we like to design. And at first, when we worked on the very first Life is Strange game, I wasn't sure if this kind of, you know, just exploring a room, looking at objects, even if it's not linked to a puzzle or some inventory stuff.
You didn't think people would sort of be into it?
Would it work for the players or not? But we saw that it
I
did
think
work.
personally, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about it, the fact that you can get so into like the tiny little details. Like, I mean, there's so many games where you're like in a giant robot, or, you know, like going into space and doing all these things, but actually it's in these, like, everyone can sort of relate to or have moments like that, you know, and that's the really beautiful thing, and it's the thing that means these characters become so much more important to players, right? Like, I think that's one of the many reasons, like, people warm to Max and Chloe so much.
Yeah, I think it's a good way for, if players cares about the character, definitely those details will work a lot on them. I guess the opposite is true also. We need to have characters and a story that the player will want to know more about, or I guess all that could feel a bit pointless if players didn't think about it.
Well, the thing that's great about this is, like, when you walk into a teenager's room, everyone knows you're going to find something in the nightstand, right? That's where you go immediately, because you're like, I'm going to find something that they don't want me to see here. Good to be safe.
So yeah, this scene is designed in a way like basically you're really thinking you're going to the party. That's what, you know, you can take the condoms or prepare yourself.
And stuff,
So
you really do. You're actually genuinely preparing for it.
But it's not just a trick. It's also, of course, there to explain and to have enough time to explain who Sean, Daniel, and Esteban are, because since what's happened next, and we are basically getting rid of all of this. We needed time for the player to still know the characters, know the family, and know what they're losing. Because the fact that you're on the road, you're by yourself, in the next scene would be much less impactful if you just didn't know what you lost.
Yeah. So there's a lot of Vonnegut references in the house as well. What was kind of the idea with that?
It's basic. We really like to put some. It was the same in the first game, to put some references to authors we like, to pop culture references we enjoy, and it's one of our narrative designer, Matthias, who's just a huge fan of Vonnegut, and when I talked with him with this what kind of letters we could put in this kind of decoration, he had this idea, and it was great. Let's go with it. Because
I think when he goes downstairs, he
talks
about
it
as well.
Basically, when we're trying to put Easter eggs or references like that, we're most of the time trying to really put them in a way that makes sense in the universe. So it's more about the character knowing the references rather than having just a reference, reference that the character doesn't know about.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just kind of like putting it in there for the sake of it. And I think that the Life is Strange community is so in tune with the characters, and so, like, I mean, you know, I know from playing it myself, you just love finding those links and those very subtle sort of nods to certain themes and stuff. It's quite nice to be able to fit those together.
So there is all those kind of details where, if you take time, you can see. Of course, there is letters from the dad of the neighbor. So you see, yeah.
Let's see. And then, of course, there's lots of references to Karen down here as well.
So it's subtle ones. It makes more sense when you've played episode 2. You know, yeah, this kind of stuff. It's basically what you try to do is to not talk about her much, just showing some void, I would say. Like she left. Her absence is complicated for Sean, and in those few lines, we wanted to show that Sean is angry at something.
Exactly, because there's no point there that the word mother is
definitely.
said, but there's some rage, like he's angry, he's so angry about it, and that's sort of like, it makes it really, well, it just sort of sets things up because you want to know what the story is there.
We'll have to see.
No, I have to
But
wait.
you've heard more about it in episode 2.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I love the little goldfish at the bottom of that one as well.
And even in those kind of small details, there is a lot of work that's been done also by our camera artists. You know, it's just just really simple in the shot we just had, but the way the camera starts up and go down, it's just ends. It's synced with the line. You start by showing what Sean painted, and when he says, but Daniel
also
had
Daniel,
to, and they are filming the part of the drawings that Daniel did. So I think it's. There is a lot of small details everywhere in the work of the team, and it's quite complicated, even if it's, because Life is Strange is not a really complicated game in terms of game design, but we tried to push some of the important parts with the tools we have, with storytelling, with camera work and stuff like that. So
I mean, you say it's not complicated, but it's like, I mean, this is all basically a tutorial as well, but it's so subtle that you wouldn't, like, it's because it's performing so many functions. It's teaching people how to play, maybe with the new mechanics and stuff. It's filling them in on story. It's doing so much on so many levels, and it's very economic with everything that it does as well. Now, which one was it? I think it was this one.
I think it is.
Yes. Per Esteban. Yeah, like, I mean, the fact that, like, you do only have these, let's say, 20 minutes to kind of really be invested. I mean, that 20 minutes has to carry you through all 5 episodes, you know, really.
And I'm really, really happy with the voice actors for those guys.
Yes.
I think the voice actor for Esteban is just great. I mean, when we just have him in the booth, he's so passionate about the characters, and the voice actor himself is really kind and nice, and I think it gives.
He's got a very kind voice. Yeah, definitely.
It worked really well for having the cool dad. That basically you don't want to leave.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe something we did is maybe we made Esteban too perfect. I don't know. That's a question I'm asking myself sometimes.
You could say that about William as well, really. You know.
Yeah.
But I think it's important though, because I mean, I think up until after something like that happens, also all your memories of that person are kind of perfect because you disregard all of the other stuff. Like, that's just a natural thing that you do. So I think that it's definitely allowed. But what were the voice actors of the 2 boys like to work with?
Oh, they're really great. I mean, it was one of the biggest challenge for this game is casting a 9 year or 10 years old kid.
That can't be easy.
So yeah, it was something we were not really sure about it when we started. We were thinking, like, if we don't find a great kid voice actor,
I mean, a lot of it rests on that.
But yeah, extremely happy with both of the kids. So Sean is played by Gonzalo Martin, which is great. I think he's 21 or 22 years old.
And he looks very much like him, doesn't he?
It looks, that's a complete coincidence because we had the character of Sean done before we did cast Gonzalo.
Right.
But yeah, and he's really invested in the character. He's been working with us since a long time now because there is much more voice lines in this game than in the first Life is Strange. So I guess he already did more recording sessions than the actors from the first game.
How much do they kind of do in one singular session?
It takes a lot of time. I think basically for one episode we have something like 5 to 7 days of recording. Yeah. Not with just one actor, of course, but a blend of everybody. And I would say that Gonzalo for Sean is basically doing for each episode 6 or 7 times 5 hours.
Jeez, yeah.
So that's quite intense.
And are the kids in the booth together? Are they reacting off each other?
For the first episode, we did a bit of dual mic sessions like that, where they were together. But for time constraints and production constraints, we are doing less and less.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard too.
Yeah, it takes twice the time, so it's more complicated. And in the end, we are still doing it for some of the most complicated sessions, where basically there is a lot of back and forth between them. But we have a great audio director with voice director, I mean, with the same Phil Bash. We worked with him on the first season, and he worked on Before the Storm too.
Oh wow!
And the way we work with him, I'm always on Skype when he's with them in Los Angeles, and we saw that having them doing one part and then having the other by himself doing the part still works really well because the direction is great. So the voice director, and when I'm listening, we know what the others sounded like, so we can also help the actor to make to work. So for time constraints and production constraints, we are mostly doing them just by themselves.
And do you find, like now, as the episodes are kind of going on, that they're getting a better sense of who the characters are? Are they having more ownership over the characters?
Definitely. That's always the case, I think. I mean, which is great also with those two characters, is they're coming in each episode for so many sessions. So at first, in the first episode, there was of course more trial and error to find the character, and now they're really. When Gonzalo come to a session, he did read the script and he's really excited about it. He asks a lot of questions like, "Oh, and I've seen that, so is my character doing that?" Yeah. And sometimes he wants to have spoilers for what happened in the next episode.
Oh, do you try and make sure like that they know as little as possible, or like?
So it's not that we try. I think it's more also just a contract thing. Also with our publisher, is basically they know everything of the episode they're working on, and I gave them some basic guidelines of what they are going, but they don't know, for example, the ending. So
maybe some uncertainty is good as well, you know, like gives them a bit more.
Yeah, and I think that's the same in TV shows where basically the actors doesn't know the ending. But for continuing on the voice actor, so the kid Roman George is just awesome. We did, I think, how did it work? We had a few auditions we had castings for a lot of kids, and we had 2 or 3 kids that we really liked. So Roman was one of them. So we had them come back for a small test session, and it was so. I mean, this kid was so into the character. He was really natural, He is really natural, and also is really professional. I mean, the way he's walking in the booth is directly is in the character, and I mean the
energy is really amazing. Like it's hard because I think a lot of games with children in them, you kind of, as players, you're like, oh, it's like you get into that escort kind of mindset where it's like I've got to protect them and look after them, and you're already on the back foot a little bit with it. But he's so warm and so excitable and just not a burden in any way, that you're like enthused about. You don't feel like you are looking after him, but it's also just spending time with him that you're excited about.
It was really important that the voice actor we found wasn't obnoxious or sounding. I mean, it's complicated to. I mean, kids are young, and acting is a really tough job.
Yeah.
So finding,
I love that. It's like
this
so
moment.
good.
Finding young actors that are already professionals that know how to work in the booth it's complicated, and in a game like ours, if we found a voice actor that would got on your nerves after a few minutes, I think it would kill the project.
Yeah, it really would. Yeah.
Because who would like to protect him if you just wanted to
you just
make
want to push him
shut
down
up?
a ravine or something? Yeah.
But yeah, Roman is doing such a great job at still having those hints of still being a young kid, a burden, sometimes being, I don't know, a bit of a brat.
Yeah.
But not that much, and most of the time you just want to root for him. So that's a good balance we wanted to have. I really like this scene.
I know, it's so good. It's good to see his kind of vulnerability as well, because like it's the same with a 16-year-old teenager. You could be like, if he's really sullen and all the time, but you really do want the best for both of them, and you want to, I guess, mold them in the best that they can be. Like, I don't know, I just feel like from this very first scene, we were fully invested in making them, be great characters, and it's really exciting to see their growth and how it's sort of changing.
Cool. Yeah. I think Sean was also a really interesting character to design, because so in the first Life is Strange we had Max was a girl, and this was our first game. And the first game I worked on with a male character, because before we worked on Dontnod on Remember Me. Yeah. And
that's so crazy. Your first male character.
Yeah. That's also something we wanted to, because we have some players who said that we should have also have female characters in this game, and that Life is Strange is about female characters. I don't think so. I think it's about, I don't know, telling stories about any kind of characters when the story is worth telling. But also I do understand, the need for representativity and somehow the lack of, the ratio that's heavily toward male characters, even if it's changing in a good way, I think.
It's gotta be fitting the story as well, though. I think it's like, it is just because the first Life is Strange, I feel like a lot of players, myself included, almost felt like a sense of ownership over the fact that it was such a female-led story, and felt really protective over that. But that's not to say that this is tackling new themes altogether. Like the first Life is Strange, I love the way that it kind of turned into like almost a horror story for women, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's probably not what you meant it to be, but that's what it kind of felt like. I see your point. Because it dealt with so many specific female issues, like, but that were also universal, but just spoke so much to a lot of experiences that a lot of women I've spoken to have had. But like I like this also because, it allows you to step into the shoes of someone completely different and seeing it from completely different perspectives. In this case, these two boys who have dual nationality, who, are suddenly find themselves very much on the outside, trying to find safety, and that's a really interesting new story. Sad face.
Poor kid.
I love this as well, because this is a kind of like you're sort of teaching players that they can also do other things while chatting.
Yeah, this is one of the, I don't know, not upgrade, but something we wanted to.
An evolution almost. Yeah.
And we have also all those dialogues that are staged in the same way as the first game, but we really wanted to sometimes try to let the player have more control over the course of a discussion. And so in this example, you're still in control of the camera, you can do other interactions, and Lila is reacting to what you're doing. Like if you do too much of the random stuff,
she's like, you're not listening.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you just take the ball and bounce it on the window, she says that it's obnoxious and makes too much noise. So we don't. It's more costly in terms of production to do a scene like that than just a dialogue with cameras. But we try to have some of those in each episode.
It also kind of means the players are paying a bit more attention, maybe as well, that they can be sort of getting this extra information.
Yeah, and like just like you saw Daniel walking away behind the window, you could have just missed it if you were looking away.
And we know from like the previous season that Life is Strange fans and players love like finding out those little secrets as well.
Yeah, they do. The community is really awesome. I mean,
so cool.
they are finding so much details, and you know, on Reddit or on the wiki, they really find stuff we sometimes think they wouldn't find.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's amazing.
Quite crazy.
And it's also part of the joy of playing these games as well. I think is like love playing them, and then I also then look forward to sort of going online and seeing what other players have found or what sort of theories they have. Like the theories are one of my favorite part of like the whole thing.
Which I think is a complicated thing on this season, because the theories are, I would say, less obvious than in the first season, which was really having this small town mystery where you could really have this kind of theories about who did it, who's the killer, what happened to Rachel.
That's true.
Here we're more with this road trip.
Well, because we're in the second episode, and like I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Yeah. I mean, why would you question Daniel? I mean,
I don't know, because he put all his fake blood on the shirt of this guy. Maybe this guy is really nice. And
yeah, sure. That seems terrible though. I remember watching this through my fingers. I was just like, oh my gosh. Suppose because you must have like I mean, you know, he's saying all this terrible stuff, and you're just building to this horrible crescendo. It's almost like
Oh yeah, these scenes were quite complicated to work on, to even just about the heavy aspect of it, but also about, you know, even the editing and everything. But I think in the end that the scene is quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were kind of like, because at that point I think it's not quite sure what's happened, like whether he's like sort of hurt his spine or is like whatever else, and it's kind of, as soon as he gets involved, it's just absolute anarchy. Because I mean, obviously he thinks it's a lot worse than it actually is.
Wait, this guy was beating up my little brother. Now, hands behind your head. This is fucking bullshit.
Because there are, oh gosh. He's actually quite a green cop, right? You kind of make that distinction as well.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to portray, at least, that he's really unsure of what he's doing and just quite a rookie.
He's very
and
nervous,
panicked and nervous. And
then we're right back to the starting teaser. When did it kind of come to you to give the power to the other character rather than the player character?
I think this came quite quickly when we were brainstorming about what Life is Strange 2 would be. The first thing that we knew for sure that we wanted to be about education and about having a young kid with the main character and having all the choices and action of the player being reflected on this kid, on this character, which is quite a thing that you've seen in other games. I mean, you have that in a way in The Last of Us or in the first season of The Walking Dead with Clementine. But then we thought that, okay, if the player has the power, it's interesting, but basically you get to be really powerful, and then even if you're educating your brother,
he's just there.
He's just there, and he has to do what you say because you have the power. We thought that if we took the problem in the other way, that if the young kid has the power and you're just powerless, basically what you're doing is your education is there to shape a kid to become, I don't know, something like a superhero or a super villain. So it felt really interesting in a gameplay and storytelling point of view to have him basically be really powerful and you responsible on what does he do with his power.
It's really interesting to me as well because like I feel like the mundane things of the first season, the power of words in themselves were what really drew players to the story, not even so much the supernatural powers, which are never really explained anyway. They're just kind of like a bonus to the story. Whereas here it's like the power, like your words are the power because they're the only thing that you have to sort of be able to shape things to how you want them to be. It's a cool little sort of counterpoint, I think.
And I think it was also a challenge because we weren't sure if the players would like this approach because I mean, of course, most of the times in a video game you want to be in control, you want to be empowered, you want to...
You're the chosen one, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think in our story it was important to do it this way. I hope that the players will like it this way. And that's why also we did put a lot of work on Daniel, so the players really feel that what he's doing has some impact on him.
Yeah.
And so this scene, the forest scene, is some sort of almost a small sandbox where we're showing what kind of things you can do with Daniel, what how he's working. So we had to develop a lot of new tools for the AI, for the motion kits of the characters, where it's much more advanced and complicated than what we did with Chloe in the first season.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the scenes with Chloe, she was just sitting somewhere. Basically, if you remember, the scene is in Frank's RV. She goes and sits at the computer, and then she makes some comments while you're exploring, but she doesn't move from there.
Yes.
And you have no interaction with her rather than having a dialogue when you found the proof about Frank knowing Rachel. But in here we wanted to be much more interactive. So Daniel is walking around you, he's reacting,
watching you,
he's watching you, exactly, he's reacting to what you're doing, looking at, or sometimes he can also go by himself somewhere and ask you to come and to interact with him. So it was a lot of work to create the system, the different systems that we needed to make a scene like this one.
I feel like the systems are like, I mean, they seem quite subtle in a lot of ways. Like we've played episode 2 and we've kind of got like a good ending in a way that Daniel listened to us and told Chris, and Chris didn't get hurt, and Daniel enjoyed his present and was able to enjoy his present. But some people have commented on our Let's Play being like, I feel like we did the same thing, but Daniel didn't listen to us, and you know, he kind of did his own thing. And it seems like there are a lot of invisible things at work here.
Yes, there is. Basically, what we are doing in this game is there are the most visible consequences. There are some of those, of course. You have choices, you have a direct consequence, you see with some different paths. But we have the bigger, overarching consequences on Daniel, where basically we are, for this ending of episode 2, when you can say to Daniel that he needs to tell the truth to Chris, and then he decides if he listens to you or if he lies. He continues to lie to Chris. And the way, I don't want to give the secret of the recipe in terms of game design, because it would sometimes
people would gamify it. You want them to just make their own choices.
Yeah, exactly. That's something we try to not gamify too much those kind of systems, because it sometimes breaks the reality of the story. But what happens is that what you did in episode 1 and episode 2 has implication on Daniel's, how basically you're educating him and how he sees for him what is moral and what is not moral. So I guess you had your version where he did, so he did listen to you, and he said the truth because you were a good moral compass for him. Maybe the other people who don't have that maybe made choices in episode 1 and 2 that were less moral.
Where we
So-
said do something, but we went and did. We were basically
Exactly.
a hypocrite or something. Yeah.
Or maybe something, I don't know, there is a lot of different
Yeah.
variations. You can, like, stealing, or
Yes.
or for example, sending him to beg for food when he asks you
Oh
two times
gosh,
to not
yeah.
do it. If you still force him, that's the kind of decision that has an impact
Yeah.
on how he trusts you, how he sees you as a good
It's really
father
interesting.
figure.
I like how it's not as binary as you might think as well. Like I feel like we decided early on to try and set a good example, but then there are times when, you know, like, and telling him not to use his powers, for example, but then we went back on that when the wardrobe fell on our grandfather, because it just seemed like the right thing to do in the time. And it's interesting to see that he can kind of get that. He's sort of like, he knows right from wrong. Like, it's not just like, don't use your powers. There are some grey areas there, and it's kind of fun finding that line, or seeing what he thinks that line is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I would say that he doesn't know what's right or wrong. He knows what he thinks is right or wrong,
Right.
basically.
Based on what
yeah,
you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's one of the big challenge of the game is, and I know that it's not always visible because it's a lot of
Well, it
small,
shouldn't be, I
subtle
guess,
things.
Yeah.
But that's exciting because I think that there is much more variations of smaller things in this game than in the previous one. There is really a lot of different lines and actions that Daniel can do or won't do based on all of this.
Yeah.
And the way we did design it, and I think that's based also on reality, is that there is no perfect path. You
No.
cannot teach him all the best moral values while still having him think that you're the good brother.
Yes.
Sometimes the question is, do I want to be the fun good brother that maybe put him in danger or
do
let
I
him
want to
do
survive?
something he wants to
Yeah.
do? Or should I tell him, no, you cannot do that, but then he's frustrated and he sees you as something
Like sort of
blocking him.
dictator, yeah. Man.
So yeah, in this scene, there's basically a lot of. I think looking at playthrough of this scene, most of the players did play it in a different way. There is a lot of possible ways to do that. You can either go straight ahead. You can, for example, look at what is looking here.
I mean, this is a lesson right here, right off the bat, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a pretty big one. Stealing.
Yeah.
Is it okay or is it not?
On something that's really mundane is
Yeah.
there.
Like, nobody would really miss a chocolate bar, would they? Like, it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big
Exactly.
theft, but he doesn't know the difference between stealing a chocolate bar and stealing something, you know.
And you have the example, if you steal the chocobar here, I think basically later you'll see you can steal the chocobar.
I love the
chocobar
misdirection here as well, because you think he's saying, please, 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 can we take this
Yeah.
one? But he actually says, please, 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 can we get one the next time we stop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, he's not asking
Yeah.
to steal it. Yeah. So we are talking before, about documentation, and so this kind of place is also taken from
Where you've
inspiration from places we were on the Oregon coast, and I think that's something that I really like, and we've shown in the first game and this game is how beautiful the Pacific Northwest
absolutely.
is.
In a very sort of wild way.
Yeah, it's so big. I mean, the Pacific Ocean is quite impressive.
Yeah.
And in this scene, that's something we tried to push with also the sound designer and the artist, is to basically, with the sound of the waves and
Yeah.
everything, to get this feeling of being near the ocean at night is quite daunting or something.
Yeah, it can be. It's the vastness of it, especially when, because I mean, you kind of sense that at this point in time, Sean is feeling a lot of pressure. I mean, he's got like his brother and now, for some time, a puppy to look after. Oh no!
Hey,
Look at
let's play
it.
fetch with the pup.
Her, sorry.
Let me do a test throw first. Ooh.
Oh yeah, the puppy.
I hope Mushroom wasn't based on any IRL puppies. That would just be too heartbreaking.
No, not really.
No.
But yeah, that of course we know what happens in episode 2 with the puppy, and we know that it could feel a bit easy, I would say, what we did.
What was your thinking behind
with
that?
Mushroom? So basically, I think that the way we did write this scene, what happened with Mushroom in episode 2, is that the first moment where basically Daniel will use his power against a living thing, a living animal.
Right.
So, and you have the choice to let him do or stop him to
So
not
you had
hurt
to give him good reason to, basically.
Exactly. It's a bit, like I say, easy, or maybe could feel a bit cheap. I understand that, but we wanted to find something strong enough to at least have the player think, should I kill this cougar, this puma, or no? I mean, if it was just the wildcat threatening the kids, I think that every player would just scare him away and not hurt him with the power. So that's why I really think we needed to have something strong enough, a connection that would push Daniel, of course, to be really mad at this creature, mad enough to maybe want to hurt him.
Yeah.
And we wanted the same for the player. So basically that the player could at least have some hint of reason to maybe accept that Daniel hurts. It is.
But yeah, with the puppy, I'm just like, I mean, it was tempting, but I was still like, it's not the animal's fault. Like, yeah, sure, of course you're angry about it, but the cougars are gonna eat like helpless, defenseless animals. That's kind of what they do.
So you did let it go.
Yeah, I let it go. Yeah. Had to. I think it's important. I think and I don't think anything warrants. It's like kind of an eye for an eye thing. It was like, if he thinks it's okay to sort of channel his rage in that way, that's never going to end well. So
I didn't really watch the percentages of choices for this one. I don't know how many players decide to hurt the wildcat.
It'd be interesting actually to see how that like sort of leveled out, because we played it very I think immediately on release, so the percentages hadn't quite figured themselves out then, but. And we have to get it officially on camera. This is not based on Johnny.
It is not. It's a
maybe not initially, but
I admit it's a great coincidence. It looks a lot like him.
It looks even more like him now.
Yeah.
The hair.
It's you.
You do have to do, in the interest of fairness, I feel like you have to have some sort of blonde Irish woman in there at some point, but like, I'm just saying. But no, this is, I mean, and it's nice as well, because like, when this character is first introduced, I don't know, I think most players are probably going to be quite wary of them. Have you seen the theories that they're lost Preston as well?
Yeah. I did read that. It's really like all the time looking at the series and the wild things that the player imagined.
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean,
it's fun though.
It's fun, and it's really great to see the players getting that much involved with the stories, with the characters, so they can imagine a lot of things. That's something we tried. I mean, we didn't really talk about the art style, but we really tried with the game to still looks like a Life is Strange game, so it still looks like the first one, but trying to improve the details, or I wouldn't say too much of the details, because it's not overly detailed.
No.
But maybe I don't know, there is much more movement in the air, in everything. There is a bit more detail still in the textures, and we try to keep the pictures looking like the series, but looking something more polished, more like some, I don't know, animated movie or animated cartoon.
Well, it's nice that it's still got its own very specific, kind of iconic sort of art style, and that art style might not be photorealistic, but it's still got its own kind of, little telltale. Like, I like how when the wind moves, it's kind of like got these little lines that sort of flow through and everything.
yeah, still stylized in a way.
Yeah.
Or even the way we work on the fires, every visual effects, the way we work with the FX guys is trying to have them almost hand drawn.
Yeah.
So it still has this feeling of concept art or something like, yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't say a Pixar movie because obviously we're not there yet, but we're trying to reach this kind of feeling that it might look like in some animated.
The light looks really great though, like just the sort of the way that the nighttime kind of, like all the different light sources look really great. I really like that you can run him a bath in this one as well. It's very cute.
What about this one? Not bad.
This is the first time they have a real bed since 3 or 4 days.
Huh?
So
Wanna play it over?
obviously he wants the bed in front of the TV.
Obviously.
Ready?
I'm so ready to beat you.
Rock's always a good one.
I told you, man.
Wanna play another round?
So I think everything is randomized. So we didn't.
Oh really?
When
So,
we
okay.
when we did design this scene, we thought that maybe we should just
Make it the same
make
every
it-
time?
we thought about that, and then we thought no, it should be random because oh
I'm so good at this game.
You crushed him.
Stupid kid. Obviously I'm gonna give it to him. It means more to him.
For real?
I don't really care.
Awesome.
Aww.
They're the same,
Yeah, but I like this
Come here,
one.
doggy.
He's having the best day ever. He's got like the bed in front of the TV, got
Yeah.
a puppy.
Totally weak.
Especially you, Pigpen.
I wouldn't be so sure, cake boy. I'll call you when it's ready.
I'll be right here.
Of course you will.
And he's watching Hot Dog
I
Man.
know. Oh, I love that you got a hot dog man in there. Had to.
Ooh, I remember this.
Let's put this in the bathroom.
It's kind of crazy how like popular hot dog man has gotten. Like he's got his whole
Yeah.
lore of his own now as well.
I think we really had no clue when we created Hot Dog Man in the first season. That
Yeah.
I think at first it started by it's our lead concept artist Edouard Kaplan, who is the guy who is
Yeah.
also drawing. I mean all the key art of
Yes,
each
yeah,
episode. I think it was in episode 4. You know, when you're in the alternate timeline in Chloe's room, I think at a point he had a picture of Max with a T-shirt, and it was just one random
Yeah.
drawing of a sausage guy on a T-shirt. And I think we saw after people played episode 4 that they pointed out, "Hey, I know this T-shirt." So we started to use it again in episode 5 at some point, and yeah, it started to be.
That's the
went-
best thing about this
was
being
popular.
episodic, right?
Yeah.
Like that you can react that way. Like you can sort of pick up on what people are enjoying, and like people almost feel like involved in the development process in a way.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's even if it's complicated to work on
Yeah, it must be.
on an episodic game because you have basically
5 times the stress.
exactly you're basically making 5 small games, but still 5
exactly.
games with the submission process, the bug fix. So it's really complicated and stressful, but it's also really great to
To
be
see
able to
those
see
reactions,
in
yeah.
almost in real time the reactions of the community, looking at playthrough, basically at videos like the one
Yes.
you are doing, or a lot of players just playing your games, and it's really interesting to just watch them and see what worked, what didn't
Yeah.
work, to know when I watch your playthrough that we need to kill the dog in the next episode.
No, don't you dare blame that on us. We did say we were like we knew what was gonna happen, and we tried to steel ourselves, and it still broke all our hearts. Cause look at how adorable she is with her little bandana.
Try and keep them in the bathroom.
I will.
That's the thing. It's just yeah,
And no,
it had to happen.
dog is not
I
taking the
guess.
bathroom.
Hey, don't worry.
But yeah, maybe we could have just thinking again about the dog and what we did. Like I said, we needed this moment
Yeah.
to put Daniel in a situation where his power would be could be targeted toward a living being.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have done it differently. I don't know. But another thing is that also animating a dog and having a dog as an AI is
Yeah.
also costly. So it's not the reason. Basically, it was still for the narrative reason I said, but it's also eased on us on production issues to not have a dog until the
It would
end of the
complicate
5
things for
episodes.
sure, yeah. Because it's like every time they get into an altercation, it's like, well, where's the dog? You
And
know,
he
'cause
would
that-
have to grow up.
Exactly.
also.
And it would be, oh god. And now she'll never grow up. So this is one thing that we never did. We've never gone down the Lila route, and I know that like that's probably the one thing that I do genuinely miss about our playthrough. Like I'm quite pleased with how it's going otherwise, but I feel bad about Lila because she's such a great character. She made such an impression. So because we didn't call Lila back in our playthrough,
Let's call her. But it's a tough choice because
It is.
definitely, you know, do you want to
you're risking a lot.
risking her, risking
Us,
yourself,
yeah.
or do you want just to keep in touch with your whole life?
I guess.
I don't know. I guess our sort of mindset was it's like a clean break is kind of easier as well, because otherwise she's still worried about you. It doesn't really stop her being worried about you, but it's just more complex. I didn't do anything. Oh,
How about you?
I feel like that's
Are you okay?
Everything's fucked up. I'm so worried.
I think it was also always great to, you know, when you design an interactive dialogue like this one, the way we are thinking about the different choices and options, there is always we have a pattern in mind, like is it we want to put the player, even in the small choices, to put the player in a situation where it might be difficult to answer,
Yeah.
or there should be at least a clear differences between
there
the
has
two
to be
answers.
some balance, right? Like it can't
Yeah.
be one is very obviously better than the other,
Yeah.
or you know they have to both have some
Or,
pros and cons.
I mean, sometimes you can have one. I think you can have one which is obviously better because sometimes it's not, or it can be also a way of how do we want the player to role play the character.
Right.
So in this one, for example, it's a bit of do you use the answer that is more empathic toward Lila, or are you more talking about your experiences as Sean and the fact that you're not guilty or that you didn't do anything? So it's more about asking about her or telling about you.
Yes.
And there's this kind of approach.
Yeah. What should we say here?
And it's interesting to look at you or other players
And how they
playing the game just
interpret.
to see how they are interpreting
Yeah.
the answer, what kind of issue they have when they
Because
want to
everyone
answer
interprets
something.
it so differently as well. Like there are people like when they comment on things, and I'm like, oh, I never even thought about it that way. That's not where my mind went. But I can definitely see where they came from when they came to a conclusion.
No way. I'm not gonna.
Because it was, I mean, we were immediately distrustful of the grandparents as well, and it turns out they weren't so bad.
I'm sorry.
Maybe this one is a bit
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah. Oh.
I guess the freaking fighters are disbanded for.
Oh.
Shit actually changes, I guess.
Oh.
So,
I know this is minor, but you've seen the line he just said when he said the freaking fighters are disbanded. It depends of what you said
At
to
the
her
very
at the very
beginning,
beginning.
yes,
You had
yeah.
a choice between two lines, and he's basically using again.
Where he's like, no way, we're
Yeah.
always.
I'll call you if I get a chance.
Because that's how, because you definitely feel the weight of when
miss you, Lila.
Daniel says, you know, don't ever lie to me again. You're like, that's a big thing to say because you have no idea what's coming, and we just know that you're going to put us in an impossible situation where we're going to need to lie, but we've promised not to. So, yeah, we threw away the phone quite quickly here.
So you can basically throw it away right now,
Right now.
when you want. Knowing that this is basically the last
The time he'll hear, yeah.
last line he has with his old life, it's one of the last memento. I mean, throwing away your phone, I think is something nowadays also for teenagers. Is basically your life is on your
Impossible,
phone.
yeah. He's got his play box. No, it's too painful. I gotta throw it away. No, I gotta. What happens? How far does that? Does it look?
No, it's basically it ends a few moments later, and then you have a shot on just the last picture of the video where you see the last shot of Esteban or something with that, and then you just have to throw it away.
Oh no.
So you still have to do it.
Yeah.
But you still have to press the button.
Poor Sean. Meanwhile, Daniel's having a little party in his room.
I think that's something we really enjoyed working on in this first episode is basically the difference between what Sean has on his shoulders versus what Daniel knows or doesn't know about the situation, just think is on this vacation that is a bit boring or even hard, but still doesn't know the truth.
Because you want to protect that innocence as well, don't you?
You played on easy. I was on hard.
So still enjoy this, that we can just...
Yeah.
That's the kind of also small interactive things we added. It's not much, but when we were playing that scene first, without those small inputs, it was fun, it was a cool scene, and I think it was Raoul who said, I think we should just, why not make it some shake cams when you press the inputs, just to be more with them.
We actually didn't play, this is the first time I'm seeing this. That's really cool. But also now I feel really guilty.
Daniel, come here.
And that's a great song from Block Party.
Yeah, it is a great song.
Right now.
Said I could have a coat.
How old is the voice actor?
Bet you a soda.
Sorry.
How old is Roman George?
I think Roman is
Going to
12 or 13, maybe 13. I'm not completely sure.
That's crazy.
And yeah, he's really focused on the
great.
character, and it's great.
I remember when we played this, it was like, this isn't gonna, we're not, sending us out to the vending machine isn't a good sign, not at all.
But basically the way we did do it is showing that Daniel knows that something's going on, because it basically, I mean, I think he doesn't really want a soda, he's just like trying to delay.
Yeah, you definitely get the sense that he's a lot smarter than you might necessarily think that he is, especially when compared to Chris. Because Chris is very naive, in a really sweet way, but like, he's not got any of the sort of issues that these guys have, I guess.
Oh my God, Daniel!
So this scene was quite a challenge also on a both creative and technical point of view. I mean, the power is important for it to be impressive visually. We also didn't want it to be, I mean, too much, especially since it's just episode 1. So yeah, there was a lot of research and back and forth to see what is really this power. Is it just, since it's telekinesis, how do we show, do we have just those floating objects, or do we add a lot of effects or stuff like that? So in the end, I'm really happy with the balance we did find. So we did, at first we had versions where we had way more, I mean, distortion or stuff but it felt too much like he had some electrical power. So we finally decided that it was more important to show mostly objects flying or stuff moving rather than too much
anything
particles or
else.
effects.
I didn't realize as well, he's really angry here. Like, we didn't answer immediately, so he fired back really quickly.
That's a kind also of small detail that depends on the way you play. It's so we don't show in this kind of way. We didn't show any timer.
Like
showing that you had to answer quickly. But I think there is another moments like that in episode 2 when you're in Karen's room and Claire arrives and she asks you questions. If you take more than 5 seconds to answer, she cuts you basically and gets angrier. That's the same here.
Why did you choose not to have the timer there?
Because we are doing that almost only once in each episode, and we want it to be more like a surprise for the players who might take too much time in a situation that shouldn't take time.
Because I mean, all the context is telling you answer quickly.
that was a lot of design talk for that. We weren't sure, should we have the timer, should we not do that? But since it's just a few moments in the game, we like when it can surprise, like it did surprise you.
Yeah, it did literally.
when-
Like I didn't know that was a thing, and that's really it's really cool. It just shows you, like it makes you go back and think, oh, what else is going on under the hood that I didn't even realize.
It's gonna be okay.
It was really, really intense to record this scene for the voice actors
Were
because
they
it's
together at the time?
I think we did this one with them together. It's in episode 1 we still had a bit of time to do it. And yeah, we needed to have this burst of anger from Daniel, and then everything goes back. And something that was really important for us is we talked earlier about having Sean, having the main character as a male character, and something that we really wanted to have is definitely not your stereotypical male character.
Yeah.
So we worked a lot trying to show that, I mean, that Sean can be emotional, that he has a lot of weaknesses, having moments where he's crying. That's something that I would say, unfortunately, we still have seen some players say, man up, Sean, don't cry. But
I think I like that though, and I do think we did pick up on that. We did talk about it, like how he's not like that sort of toxic masculinity thing. He's quite comfortable with himself, that he has he's got Lila as a best friend, and he's quite open about his feelings.
And I think that in his background, really in the beginning of the game, there might be just some hints still of somehow toxic masculinity, or some elements that are there, that are very much present in our society, a lot of characters. So we didn't want
With
to
the neighbour
have
and
him.
stuff,
Yes, and even I would say even with Sean, even it's really small, there is moments where I would say we didn't want him to be the perfect character where that doesn't have any flaws. So it also allows us to have him grow over the course of the episodes.
And it allows players to kind of find their own Sean within all those layers as well.
I mean, you have the scenes where he's practicing
Practicing?
in front of the mirror.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
In order to flirt with Jen.
Yeah.
So there is moments, of course, where he's
trying
a
to be
16-year-old
alpha
guy.
bit,
Yeah, exactly. He has at least this vision of that he should maybe be this
Exactly.
kind of guy. We're trying. I think it's really interesting to write for a male character nowadays, because there is so
More
many
scope,
games that
right? Yeah.
yes, and there is so many games that did a male character. There is a lot of games that just did the alpha male archetype, and we can try to change that a bit, find a character that also might be more vulnerable, more open also to his feelings, more willing to, I don't know, to show his weaknesses, which sometimes I would say in media guys are not allowed to.
Yeah, agreed.
And it doesn't, for me, if all the characters are guys who are not allowed to show their weaknesses or their feelings, it doesn't help our media and even society to evolve in a way that show other examples to guys.
And if you want to change it, then you've got to sort of be that change, right? You've got to sort of, start with yourselves and put an interesting and new sort of vulnerable character in there.
And I would think even in the choices, and you will see, I would say in episode 3, without spoiling, you have moments where you can have dialogue choices, and we deliberately did that, where that might feel sometimes a bit like the alpha male.
Okay.
And we tried to work that way, to have people react to that in a way that maybe sometimes can, I don't know, teach you something or something like that. So
much like
we'll
a
see.
Warren character from season 1, who we love to hate because he's such a fascinating character, and you can kind of read into him what you will, and a lot of people do. We certainly read into him quite a bit. Well, with that was great. Thank you. I feel like I've learned so much.
Thanks. No, it's cool. There is a lot of things to talk about. It's great to be able to talk about this project.
It must be hard when it's still ongoing.
Yeah, it is, and we are so much. I mean, right now we are working on episode 4 and 5. Yeah, it's complicated even with this project to find some time to do things like this with you, and I'm really happy that we can do that. Just talking about the game is great, and I have the feeling that right now we didn't have much chance to talk a lot about it because we're still
right
heavily working on it. But yeah, I'm really...
No, it's great. It's just really fascinating. Like, obviously, we've got little hints of where things are going and how things work, but just to get that insight as to how you've kind of come about and sort of, you've obviously thought all these things through already, and just to get a little taste of things. It's very interesting. Thank you.
It's cool. Thanks a lot.
These fucking planes, man. I want to hate them, but I'll miss them so much if I move somewhere else. Shit changes so fast. I get so emo sometimes, wondering what will happen to us once we graduate.